Wait.
Hey y'all, welcome to Something Wicked Evansville podcast. I think we're on number 3 right now, and this one is a companion to a piece I wrote about Junko Furuta. I'm going to give you just the very small backstory because I expect you to have read The Bloody Truth Part 9, and if you haven't read it, stop this, go read that first, and come back so that you will be all caught up here. For those of you that have been around for a while, you have read my erotic horror, Lexi and Blaze Impetus, and you know what kind of torture and just there are unspeakable things that go on in Lexi's playroom. But that was published. You guys have read it. They would not publish the details of this. Not even... I had to do this 8 different times and really soften what happened. So I'm going to tell you the truth now. So the first day that she was kidnapped, we went through in the piece that I wrote that she was first taken to a warehouse, then a hotel, and then Miyano had called his friends, and they all met up together, the 4 of them, plus Junko, in a park. Joe Agura offered his parents' home as a place to keep her so that they could repeatedly rape her. So in the first 10 days, while she was held captive in the house, anytime Joe's parents were there, she was forced to act like his girlfriend. That was one of the things that was dropped very quickly because Joe's parents were scared of him. He was part of the Yakuza, which is the Japanese mafia. So he had connections. His parents knew it. His brother knew it. But nobody did anything to help Junko. So she was forced during that time to call her parents and tell them that she had run away. And we had talked about in the piece that she was starved, fed cockroaches. What she had to drink was urine and the semen of the boys who were raping her. She was forced to masturbate, strip in front of others. She was burned with cigarette lighters all over her body. They lit fireworks and set them off in her ears, in her mouth, in her vagina. Foreign objects were repeatedly inserted into her vagina and anus, and that included a still-lit light bulb. And that was just in the first 10 days that they held her there. By day 11, she had been beat countless times. It was way too many to even count. But they like to hold her face to the concrete and step on it repeatedly. When they got tired of doing that, they tied her hands above her head to the ceiling so that they could use her as a punching bag. And they damaged all her internal organs. They made the blood run from her mouth, and when they had damaged her so much that she could only breathe through her mouth, she was beaten more because it made it harder for them for her to perform oral sex on the boys. Now these were hundreds of boys that came through. During the whole 44 days she was raped, over 500 times, which is probably a conservative estimate. They took her down when they were finished with using her as a punching bag. They took her down and they tied her hands and her legs to the concrete where she could not protect herself, and they repeatedly dropped dumbbells on her stomach. When she tried to drink water that they were trying to give her because one of them felt a little guilty. Her stomach, of course, couldn't accept it, and she threw it up. And when that happened, they burned her with cigarettes. She tried to escape at one point, and they brought her back in, tied her down, and put lighter fluid on her feet and legs, and they lit her on fire. They also took a firework, lit it, put it in her anus, and used a bottle to shove it up further. The firework did go off, and it broke the bottle, of course, inside her anus. By day 20, she couldn't walk because she could walk, but she couldn't walk properly because her legs had been burned so bad. On top of the burns, the boys had taken bamboo sticks and beat her legs and her back. Again, they enjoyed sticking fireworks into her anus and lighting them, and they did that repeatedly. Her hands were smashed by weights, and then her fingernails cracked and ripped from her body. She was beaten with a golf club. There were cigarettes inserted into her vagina. She was forced to drink her own urine. She was beaten with iron rods, forced to sleep outside on a balcony in the middle of winter. When they forced her to sleep on the balcony, she got understandably very, very cold. It dropped her body temperature. And the boys were not happy with her body temperature. And as a result, they took skewers of grilled chicken and jammed them into her vagina and her anus, causing horrible, horrible bleeding. And after all that, she still almost escaped. She managed to reach the telephone again. One of the boys caught her just in time. And what they did that time was poured lighter fluid over her legs and then held a lit candle over the top of her, just taunting her for a very long time before they finally caught her legs on fire. And when she went into convulsions, they thought that she was faking so that they would stop. They put her out, and then they woke her up again and set her on fire again. By day 30, they'd moved to dripping hot wax onto her face. Her eyelids had been burned with a cigarette lighter. She had been stabbed several times with sewing needles into her breast. They took a pair of pliers, grabbed her left nipple, and literally twisted it off. They, again, for some reason that day, wanted to insert hot light bulbs into her again. So again, another lit light bulb was forced inside her. They also decided to rape her with a pair of scissors, and by that time, she had been through so much trauma that her brain was shrinking. Her eardrums had been irreparably damaged. Her anus and her vagina had no separation at all. It had been ripped completely. On the 40th day, she begged them to just go ahead and kill her, and they laughed at her, they beat her, and they raped her again. By day 44, they mutilated her with an iron barbell, and they sat down and decided that if she won at a game of, I'm probably going to murder this, but Mahjong, I think is how you say it. If she won, that they would let her go. Well, she played and she did win, but they beat her at that point. But before they did, they took a candle, a lit candle, held the flames to her lips and burned them off. held them to her eyes and her nose, and then they poured lighter fluid onto her legs, arm, her face, and stomach, and then lit her on fire. It lasted, that last final little torture right there lasted for 2 hours, and she died later that day. They had just left her in the middle of the floor, and she died before they got back, so she did die alone. But I guarantee you it was sweet release when she went. They took her and put her in a 55-gallon drum and then filled it with concrete. And if you go Google the pictures, they're pretty horrible. They're pretty horrible. So, if you read the piece, you know the boys really didn't get anything at all. And the main one, who, by the way, has changed his name, is still walking free again now. So I don't know, will the justice system ever improve? Will it ever improve in any country? Will there ever be justice anywhere? So that's about it for the night, you guys. You know how we do it. Stay safe, stay wicked. We love you.